In the sprawling reaches of the Viridian Galaxy, the Hagora Empire's grip tightened, like a vice around the outlying planets. Their warships loomed over civilian settlements, silent reminders of an authority that brooked no defiance. What had begun as a peacekeeping coalition had mutated over centuries into a ruthless regime that crushed dissent under the guise of maintaining galactic order. Major Aura Lennox stood at the viewport of their stolen shuttle, her platinum hair reflecting the cold light of distant stars. Her violet eyes, the unmistakable mark of her Valyrian heritage, scanned the darkness for pursuit vessels. The distinctive ridge patterns along her temples glowed faintly in the dim light of the cockpit, a biological response to her heightened alertness. Valyrians were known throughout the galaxy as formidable warriors, their enhanced strength and reflexes making them valuable allies and feared enemies. Behind her, Colonel Elias Harrow worked quietly at the navigation console, his human features drawn with exhaustion. Once a decorated officer in the Hagora military, he was now branded a traitor to his species, all because he had questioned orders to exterminate a peaceful Valyrian settlement. "Any signs of pursuit?" Elias asked, his voice rough from too little sleep. Aura shook her head. "Nothing yet, but they'll find us. They always do." The story of how they came to be fugitives together had become legend across the stars. 6 months ago, on the contested moon of Theros, General Marcus Dren of the Hagora forces had cornered Elias, intent on executing him for insubordination after Elias refused to fire on civilian targets. Aura, a mercenary hired to protect mining interests on the moon, had witnessed the confrontation. Something in Elias's defiant stance, his refusal to compromise his principles, even in the face of death, had awakened something primal in her. She had intervened, cutting down General Dren with her plasma blade in a swift, brutal strike. As Dren fell, she had locked eyes with Elias, blood spattering her face. In that moment, following an ancient Valyrian tradition, rarely invoked in modern times, she had spoken the words that would bind their fates. "Your life is now mine to protect. By blood and stars, I swear it." What neither of them had anticipated was how quickly the story would spread. The tale of a Valyrian warrior who had slain a Hagora general to save a human defector grew with each retelling. Soon, Aura's oath was on the lips of rebels and dreamers across a dozen systems. "Anyone who kills Elias, I will tear the universe apart to find them." The Hagora High Council, already embarrassed by Dren's failure and Elias's defection, could not ignore such a direct challenge to their authority. They placed a bounty on Elias's head so vast it was measured in Zepta credits, a sum so large it required its own denomination. The official charge: species traitor and instigator of interspecies sedition. "We should reach the Nomad Belt by morning," Elias said, breaking the silence. "If Mira's coordinates are accurate, we'll find sanctuary there, at least for a while." Aura nodded. Though sanctuary had proven elusive thus far, for 6 months, they had fled from planet to planet, moon to asteroid, always one step ahead of Hagora forces, or bounty hunters hoping to claim the reward. The constant movement had worn them both down, but it had also forged a bond between them stronger than either would admit. "You should rest," she told him. "I'll monitor the sensors." Elias hesitated, then nodded. "Wake me if anything changes." As he left the cockpit, Aura allowed herself a moment of weakness, leaning her forehead against the cool glass of the viewport. She had never intended to become a revolutionary, never wanted to be at the center of a galactic manhunt. But she could not regret saving Elias. Something about him represented the best of humanity, a reminder that not all humans shared the Hagora Council's xenophobic views. Her communication device chimed softly. With practiced caution, she activated the encrypted channel. "Major Lennox." The voice was low, deliberately modulated to conceal its owner's identity. but she recognized it immediately. "Admiral Zast," she replied. "I wasn't expecting to hear from you so soon." Admiral Korin Zast, a high-ranking Hagora officer who had secretly been feeding them information, was perhaps their most dangerous ally. Aura had never met him in person, never seen his face. She didn't know why he helped them, and that made her wary. "Change of plans," he said without preamble. "The Nomad Belt is compromised. Hagora spies have infiltrated the settlement. Head for the Takara desert planet instead. I'm sending coordinates now." Aura frowned. "Tokara is a wasteland. We'll be exposed." "There's an abandoned mining facility in the northern hemisphere. It has functioning life support and is shielded from orbital scans. You'll be safe there until I can arrange your next move." The coordinates appeared on her screen. Aura studied them, her instincts warring with necessity. Zast's information had proven reliable thus far, but something about this diversion felt wrong. "Why the change?" she pressed. A pause. Then, "The Council has deployed the Reaver Squadron. They're led by Commander Flor Sant." Aura's blood ran cold. Sant had a personal vendetta against her, dating back to a mission gone wrong on the frost world of Nishka. Sant had lost an eye in that encounter and had sworn to return the favor, with interest. "Understood," she said finally. "Takara it is." After the transmission ended, Aura recalibrated their course. She should wake Elias, tell him about the change of plans, but she hesitated. He needed rest, and the burden of constant vigilance weighed heavier on him than he would admit. Let him sleep a little longer in blissful ignorance. As she set the new coordinates, Aura reflected on how completely her life had changed since that fateful day on Theros. Before meeting Elias, she had been a mercenary without allegiance, fighting for whoever paid the highest price. Now, she fought for something intangible, a principle, a future where Valeranes and humans could coexist without the Hagora Empire's oppression. She touched the ceremonial dagger at her hip, the one she had used to make the blood oath. According to Valyrian tradition, such an oath could only be made once in a lifetime, binding the oath-taker until death. Some of her people considered such oaths archaic, a relic of a more superstitious time. But to Aura, raised in the old traditions by her grandmother after her parents' death, the oath was sacred. What she hadn't told Elias was that breaking such an oath meant more than dishonor. It meant a slow death as the oath-breaker's own life force turned against them. Protecting him wasn't just a matter of honor. It was survival. The ship hummed beneath her fingers as she completed the course change. In the vast emptiness of space, they were just one small vessel, fragile and exposed. But Aura Lennox had survived worse odds, and now she had something worth fighting for. The Tokara Desert stretched before them, an endless expanse of crimson sand beneath a sky the color of bruised flesh. Atmospheric disturbances created shimmering mirages on the horizon, making distance impossible to judge. The abandoned mining facility rose from the desert like the skeleton of some massive beast, its rusted structures half buried by shifting dunes. "Not exactly the paradise retreat I was hoping for," Elias muttered as they secured their shuttle in what had once been a loading bay. Aura cast him a sidelong glance. "Since when did you develop a taste for luxury, Colonel?" The ghost of a smile crossed his face. "A man can dream, Major." Their easy banter masked a deeper tension. 3 months of constant flight had taught them to find moments of levity where they could. But the strain was showing on both of them. Elias's once crisp military bearing had given way to a perpetual wariness, his eyes constantly scanning for threats. As for Aura, she slept less with each passing week, her Valyrian endurance pushed to its limits. They established a perimeter, setting up the portable security system designed by their ally, Mirasol. The mermaid hybrid engineer was a genius with technology, able to create countermeasures for almost any tracking system the Hagora forces deployed. Her modified sensors would alert them to any approach within a 50-kilometer radius. Mira outdid herself this time, Elias commented, as the system came online. These readings are clearer than anything we had in the Hagora fleet. She has a personal stake in staying undetected, Aura replied. Hybrid citizens aren't exactly treated well under Council rule. The persecution of hybrid species was another of the Hagora Council's policies that had intensified in recent years. Those of mixed heritage, like Mira with her human upper body and scaled, aquatic lower half, faced discrimination ranging from employment restrictions to forced relocation. Many had joined the growing resistance movement, putting their unique abilities to use against the regime. As night fell on Tokera, the temperature plummeted. Inside the facility, they activated the emergency power cells, bringing minimal life support systems online. The central chamber had once been some kind of control room, with dusty consoles and cracked display screens. They cleared a space in the center, setting up their portable heater. In the pale blue light, Elias studied a holographic map of the surrounding sector. If Zast's information is correct, we should be able to rendezvous with Mira's contact in 3 days. From there, we can access the shadow lanes to the outer rim. Aura nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. I'm still not convinced we should trust Zast completely. His motives remain unclear. He's risking everything to help us, Elias pointed out. If the Council discovered his communications with us, he'd face execution. That's precisely my point. Why take that risk? What does he gain? Elias had no answer for that. They had debated Zast's motivations many times, never reaching a satisfactory conclusion. The Admiral's assistance had been invaluable, warning them of ambushes and providing safe routes through Hagora-controlled space. But Aura had survived as a mercenary by questioning convenient allies. As Elias continued studying the map, Aura watched him surreptitiously. The burden of guilt he carried was evident in the set of his shoulders, the furrow between his brows. He blamed himself for the deaths of his former squad members who had remained loyal to him after his defection. During their escape from the Palace Nebula, Hagora forces had intercepted the transport carrying his team. Only Elias had escaped, rescued at the last moment by Aura's swift intervention. "It wasn't your fault," she said quietly, knowing exactly where his thoughts had wandered. He looked up, surprised. "How do you always know what I'm thinking?" "Your face betrays you, Colonel. You were never meant for deception." A mirthless laugh escaped him. "Is that a compliment or a criticism?" "Neither. Just an observation." She moved to sit beside him, her voice softening. "They made their choice, Elias, just as you made yours on Theros." He closed his eyes briefly. "Choices have consequences. I'm living with mine. I just wish they didn't have to die for my principles." "They died for their own principles," she corrected him. "Honor their sacrifice by continuing the fight." Before he could respond, the security system emitted a soft chime. Aura was on her feet instantly, hand going to her weapon. "What is it?" Elias asked, already moving to the console. "Atmospheric disturbance," she replied, studying the readings. "But it's not a ship. It's planet-side." The scanner showed a massive storm system moving across the desert, headed directly for their position. Unlike typical sandstorms, this one contained unusual energy signatures, plasma discharges dancing through the swirling sand. "A plasma storm," Elias murmured. "I've heard of these on desert worlds, but I've never seen one." Aura's expression darkened. "I have, on Corvin Prime. They're devastating, capable of frying electronics and causing hallucinations in organic life forms due to the electromagnetic interference. They worked quickly to secure the facility, powering down non-essential systems and reinforcing the structural integrity fields around their shelter. As the storm approached, the air became charged with static electricity. Aura's platinum hair began to rise slightly, responding to the changing electromagnetic field. The storm hit with the force of an orbital bombardment. Sand and energy lashed against the facility's outer walls, while eerie lights played across the sky outside. Inside, despite their preparations, systems flickered and displays glitched with random data. "Communications are down," Elias reported, trying to stabilize the console. "We're cut off until this passes." Aura nodded grimly. "That could be hours, maybe days. These storms have been known to last weeks on some planets." As if in response to her words, the main power failed, plunging them into darkness for several seconds before emergency lighting activated, bathing everything in a dim red glow. The temperature began to drop immediately as the heating system struggled to compensate. "We should conserve power," Elias suggested, already reaching for their emergency supplies. "The thermal blankets will help." They huddled together beneath the blankets, their breath forming small clouds in the increasingly cold air. Outside, the howl of the storm grew louder, punctuated by crashes as debris struck the facility. "Some sanctuary this turned out to be," Aura muttered. Elias surprised her by chuckling. "Still better than that time on Nyx when we had to hide in the sewage reclamation tanks." Despite herself, Aura smiled at the memory. "You smelled terrible for days." "I smelled terrible. You were the one who fell into the secondary processing unit." Their laughter was a small defiance against the storm's fury and the constant danger that had become their lives. In the red-tinged darkness, Aura found herself studying Elias's profile. For a human, he possessed remarkable resilience. Most would have broken under the strain of constant pursuit, but he had adapted, even thrived in some ways. His tactical mind had saved them more than once when her warrior instincts would have led them into a trap. "Why did you do it?" she asked suddenly. "On Theros, why refuse the order?" Elias was silent for so long that she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but firm. "Because some lines, once crossed, change you forever." He met her gaze steadily. "I joined the Hegora fleet to protect people, not massacre them because of their species. When General Dren ordered us to fire on that settlement," he shook his head, "I saw children playing in those streets, families, ordinary people just trying to live their lives. Many officers would have followed orders anyway," Aura pointed out, "claimed they were just doing their duty. That excuse died centuries ago on old Earth." Elias replied, "No one gets to hide behind duty when committing atrocities." He paused, studying her. "Now it's my turn. Why did you save me? You didn't know me. I was nothing to you." The question caught her off guard. She had asked herself the same thing many times in the months since Theros. The truth was complex, tied to memories of her childhood, her grandmother's stories, and a sense of recognition she had felt upon seeing Elias stand his ground against overwhelming odds. "I saw something worth preserving," she said finally. "A human who saw Valeranes as people rather than targets. That's rarer than it should be." It wasn't the whole truth, but it was all she was prepared to share. The rest, the immediate and inexplicable connection she had felt, the sense that their meeting was somehow fated, remained unspoken. The storm raged through the night, but within their small circle of warmth, a different kind of bond was strengthening. Neither spoke of it directly, but both felt the shift, a deepening trust, a nascent understanding that transcended their initial oath-bound relationship. Morning brought an eerie calm. The storm had passed, leaving behind a transformed landscape. Dunes had shifted, revealing more of the facility's lower levels, and the air was charged with residual energy that made the horizon shimmer like a mirage. As they emerged cautiously from their shelter, Aura's communicator suddenly crackled to life. Through bursts of static, Admiral Zast's voice came through. "Reached you. Critical information. Reaver Squadron. Diverted, but new threat. Resistance forces." The transmission cut out abruptly, Aura tried to re-establish the connection, but the communicator remained silent. "That didn't sound good," Elias remarked, scanning the sky for any sign of approaching vessels. "No, it didn't," Aura agreed. "We need to move, now." They packed quickly, loading essential supplies onto their shuttle. The plasma storm had damaged some of the exterior plating, but the engines still functioned. As Aura completed the pre-flight checks, a proximity alert sounded. "Something's approaching from the south," Elias called, studying the scanner. "Too small for a Hagora cruiser. Looks like a skimmer? Civilian grade?" Aura joined him at the console, frowning at the reading. "Could be a scout or a bounty hunter. Only one way to find out." Elias grabbed his blaster rifle, a modified Hagora design capable of piercing light armor, and headed for the facility's observation platform. Aura followed, her own weapon at the ready. From their elevated position, they watched as a sleek, silver skimmer approached across the crimson sands. It bore no Hagora markings, nor any identifiable insignia. As it drew closer, the canopy retracted, revealing a solitary figure. "Is that—" Elias began, adjusting the magnification on his visor. Aura's enhanced Valyrian vision confirmed his suspicion. "Mira." The mermaid engineer waved frantically as she approached, her dark blue hair whipping in the desert wind. When she reached the facility, she practically fell from the skimmer in her haste. "Thank the old gods you're both alive," she gasped, her gills fluttering at her neck, a sign of extreme stress for her aquatic physiology. "We've been trying to reach you since the storm hit." "We? Who's we?" Aura demanded, still suspicious despite her relief at seeing a friendly face. Mira's expression turned grave. "The Resistance. The real one. Not the scattered cells you've been in contact with. We've been tracking you since the Pallas Nebula incident." Elias and Aura exchanged glances. Neither had known there was an organized resistance movement with enough resources to conduct such surveillance. "Why reveal yourselves now?" Elias asked. "Because everything's changed," Mira replied. "The Hagora Council has developed a new weapon, a neural disruptor calibrated specifically to target hybrid neural pathways. They're planning to deploy it against non-human settlements as a final solution to what they call the species problem." Aura felt a chill that had nothing to do with the desert morning. "How do you know this?" "We have sources within the Council," Mira said. "Deep cover operatives who've been working for years to gather intelligence. One of them managed to smuggle out the technical specifications." She looked directly at Elias. "We need your help to stop this. Your knowledge of Hagora military protocols could be the key to infiltrating the research facility where the prototype is housed." Elias hesitated, clearly torn. "What you're proposing is a direct assault on a Hagora installation. That's suicide." "Not with the right team," Mira insisted. "And not with proper planning. The Resistance has resources you haven't seen, ships, weapons, trained operatives." "And what about the bounty on his head?" Aura interjected. "Every mercenary and bounty hunter in the galaxy is looking for him." Mira smiled grimly. "That's actually working in our favor. The Hagora forces are so focused on finding you two that they've diverted resources away from their more vulnerable installations, including the research facility on Nexus 9. The pieces began to fall into place for Aura. "That's why Zast sent us here. He knew the storm would cut off communications, giving Mira time to reach us before we moved on." "Zast?" Mira looked confused. "Who's Zast?" "Admiral Korin Zast," Elias explained. "Our contact within the Hagora command structure. He's been feeding us information, helping us stay ahead of pursuit." Mira's expression changed to one of alarm. "We don't have any operatives named Zast in the Hagora fleet, and certainly no admiral." The revelation hit Aura like a physical blow. If Zast wasn't working with the Resistance, then who was he? And what was his true agenda? Before they could process this new complication, a distant rumble drew their attention skyward. 3 sleek, black ships appeared on the horizon, their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable, even at a distance. "Reaver Squadron," Aura breathed. "We need to go, now." They sprinted for their shuttle, Mira struggling to keep pace due to her aquatic physiology's limitations in the desert environment. As they reached the loading bay, the first shots from the approaching ships struck the facility, sending showers of debris raining down around them. "Get the engines started," Aura ordered Elias as she turned to provide covering fire. Her plasma rifle whined as it charged, then released a burst of energy that caught one of the pursuing ships, causing it to veer sharply. Mira scrambled aboard the shuttle, heading straight for the navigation console. "I'll set the coordinates for the resistance base," she called over her shoulder. Elias hesitated at the shuttle's entrance, looking back at Aura, who was still exchanging fire with the approaching ships. "Aura, we need to go." "Just a few more seconds," she replied, her face set in grim determination. "I need to slow them down." She reached for a plasma grenade on her belt, calibrated it quickly, then hurled it with inhuman precision at the facility's main power core. The resulting explosion would create an electromagnetic pulse that would temporarily disable the pursuing ship's navigation systems. The blast sent her flying backward, directly into Elias's arms as he rushed to pull her to safety. They tumbled into the shuttle as the loading ramp closed behind them. "Go!" Aura shouted, and Mira engaged the engines, sending them rocketing away from the collapsing facility. As they ascended through Tokara's atmosphere, the shuttle shuddered under the strain of their rapid escape. In the cockpit, Mira worked frantically to plot a course that would evade the Reaver Squadron once they recovered from the EMP. "The resistance base is in the Veil Nebula," she explained, as she programmed the coordinates. "It's shielded from Hagora sensors by the nebula's radiation. We'll be safe there." Aura, still catching her breath from the close escape, exchanged a look with Elias. Safe was a relative term these days, and with the revelation about Zast's identity, they had a new mystery to solve, one that could potentially unravel everything they thought they knew about their situation. As the shuttle broke through the upper atmosphere, the vastness of space opened before them, a field of stars that offered both possibility and peril. Somewhere out there was the truth about Admiral Zast, the Resistance's plans, and perhaps a way to end the Hagora Council's reign of terror. For now, though, they had survived another day, and in their dangerous existence, that counted as a victory. The Veil Nebula lived up to its name, a gossamer curtain of luminescent gases that shifted and swirled as their shuttle approached. Hidden within its colorful embrace was a massive asteroid that had been hollowed out and transformed into the Resistance headquarters. "Veil Actual, this is Mira Sol returning with Priority 1 assets," Mira transmitted as they neared the hidden base. "Requesting immediate clearance." A gruff voice responded. "Clearance granted. Mira, proceed to Docking Bay 3. Security protocols in effect." As they navigated through the nebula, Aura remained tense, her hand never straying far from her weapon. Beside her, Elias was similarly alert, though his expression betrayed a hint of hope that had been absent for months. The possibility of joining an organized resistance, of fighting back rather than simply running, clearly appealed to the former military officer in him. "You're worried," he said quietly to Aura, pitching his voice so Mira couldn't overhear from the pilot's seat. Aura nodded slightly. "Too many unknowns? Zast's true identity. This resistance we've never heard of. The timing of it all." "We'll get answers soon enough," he replied. "And if we don't like them, we leave. Together." The simple declaration eased some of her tension. Whatever happened, they would face it as they had faced everything since Theros, united by an oath and something deeper that neither had put into words. The asteroid base came into view, a marvel of engineering and stealth technology. Its surface was studded with concealed weapon emplacements and sensor arrays, while massive hangar doors opened to admit their shuttle. Inside, the docking bay was a hive of activity, with technicians, soldiers, and personnel of various species working with purpose and coordination that impressed even Aura's military-trained eye. As they disembarked, a welcoming committee approached. At its head was a tall, slender woman with the distinctive copper skin and forehead ridges of the Tressian species. She wore a commander's insignia on her utilitarian uniform. "Colonel Harrow, Major Lennox." She greeted them with a formal salute. "I'm Commander Lyra Desh, Chief Tactical Officer of the Anti-Hagora Coalition. Welcome to Vale Actual." Elias returned the salute reflexively, military training reasserting itself. "Commander, I wasn't aware the Resistance had achieved this level of organization." "That's by design," Desh replied with a thin smile. "The Hagora Council believes they're dealing with scattered cells of malcontents. They have no idea we've united under a single command structure." She gestured for them to follow. "The Council is waiting to brief you." As they walked through the base's corridors, Aura took careful note of the security measures, exit points, and the composition of the personnel they passed. Old habits died hard, and she wanted to know her escape options if things went south. What struck her most was the diversity of the resistance forces. Humans worked alongside Valirains, Tressians, and numerous hybrid species, all with a shared purpose that transcended their biological differences. The command center was a cavernous chamber dominated by a holographic display of the Viridian Galaxy. Around it stood a diverse group of individuals who turned to observe their entrance with keen interest. "The legendary fugitives," remarked an elderly human with a shock of white hair and cybernetic enhancements visible at his temples. "I am Dr. Emilian Voss, Science Director. Your exploits have provided excellent cover for our operations these past months." "Glad to be of service," Aura replied dryly. "Though we might have appreciated being informed that we were playing decoy." A Valyrian female, older than Aura, with battle scars visible on her exposed arms, stepped forward. "You weren't informed because we couldn't risk it. Hagora has spies everywhere, and your genuine reactions to pursuit were more convincing than any act." She inclined her head slightly. "General Celine Vex, military commander of the Coalition." Elias studied the assembled leadership. "So you've been using us as a distraction while you built all this?" He gestured to the base around them. "I'm not sure whether to be impressed or insulted." "Be practical, Colonel," advised a portly human man with an elaborate beard. "Your defection and Major Lennox's dramatic oath created a symbol that has inspired thousands to join our cause. Stories of your escapes have spread across the galaxy, giving hope to the oppressed that the Hagora Empire is not invincible." He bowed slightly. "Minister Thomas Brell, Political Division." Before the introductions could continue, Aura cut to the heart of the matter. "Who is Admiral Corin Zast?" The question caused a visible ripple of tension through the council members. General Vex and Dr. Voss exchanged glances, while Commander Desh's expression hardened. "Zast is a complication," Vex said finally. "One we've been tracking for some time." "That's not an answer," Aura pressed. Dr. Voss sighed heavily. "Admiral Corin Zast is a high-ranking member of Hagora's intelligence division. His actual position is Director of Special Operations, the department responsible for hunting down and eliminating threats to the Empire." Elias paled visibly. "If that's true, then why has he been helping us evade capture? It doesn't make sense." "Unless he's been leading us into a trap all along," Aura said, her suspicions confirmed. "Tokera was isolated, perfect for an ambush. If the storm hadn't hit when it did, delaying the Reaver Squadron." "Our analysis suggests something more complex," Commander Desh interjected. "Zast's communications with you have contained genuine intelligence that has kept you alive. Yet he's simultaneously coordinated efforts to apprehend you that have fallen just short of success." "He's playing both sides," Elias concluded. "No," Minister Brell said quietly. We believe he's playing his own game entirely, one that neither we nor the Hagora Council fully understand. Mira, who had been silent since their arrival, stepped forward. Show them the file. They deserve to know. General Vex hesitated, then nodded to Dr. Voss, who activated a secure data terminal. A holographic display flickered to life, showing personnel files from the Hagora military database. Zast's file appeared, alongside another that made Aura's blood freeze in her veins. It was her own face staring back at her, though younger, with shorter hair, and without the scar that now bisected her left eyebrow. But the file name displayed Lieutenant Karina Zast, Special Tactics Division. "What is this?" she demanded, her voice dangerously low. "Records we extracted from the Hagora Central Database," Dr. Voss explained gently. Karina Zast was Admiral Zast's younger sister. She was reported killed in action during the Nishka campaign 15 years ago. "That's impossible," Aura whispered, though a cold certainty was forming in her mind. "My name is Aura Lennox. I was born on Valyria Prime to the House of Lennox." "Your earliest memory," Vex prompted quietly. "What is it?" Aura opened her mouth to respond, then faltered. Her childhood memories had always been fragmented, something she'd attributed to the trauma of losing her parents during a Hagora raid. Her grandmother had raised her in the Valyrian traditions, but now that she focused on it, her first clear memory was of waking in her grandmother's home at the age of 14, disoriented and in pain. "Memory manipulation is standard procedure for Hagora's deep cover operatives," Dr. Voss continued when Aura didn't respond. "Particularly those of mixed heritage who can pass as pure-blooded members of other species. Your Valyrian genetics come from your mother's side, but they were enhanced through genetic modification to suppress your human characteristics from your father." "My father?" Aura repeated, the word feeling strange on her tongue. Voss's expression was sympathetic. "Admiral Corin Zast is your brother, Major, and he's been trying to bring you home." The revelation struck Aura like a physical blow. She staggered slightly, and Elias moved to steady her, his hand warm and solid on her arm. "If what you're saying is true," Elias said, his voice tight with controlled anger, "then Aura was used as a weapon by the Hagora intelligence services. Genetically modified, her memories altered, all to serve as what? A spy? An assassin?" "Both," Vex confirmed grimly. "And more. The program that created her, Project Chameleon, was designed to infiltrate non-human populations, using agents who could pass genetic scans. It was discontinued after ethical concerns were raised, even within the Hagora command." "Ethical concerns," Aura repeated bitterly. "How considerate of them." "The officers involved were reassigned or eliminated," Voss continued. "But Zast, who had risen through the ranks to become Director of Special Operations, never stopped searching for his sister. When you appeared on intelligence reports as a mercenary named Aura Lennox, he recognized you immediately. And he's been manipulating events ever since," Elias concluded. "The mission on Theros where we met, was that orchestrated too?" Commander Desh shook her head. "We believe that was genuine coincidence, but Zast has been directing your movements since then, using his position to keep Hagora forces just far enough behind to maintain the chase without capturing you." "Why?" Aura demanded. "If he wanted to recover his sister, why not just contact me directly?" "Because your conditioning included fail-safe protocols," Dr. Voss explained. "Direct confrontation with your true identity would trigger psychic defenses that could cause permanent neural damage. He needed to guide you to a place where those protections could be safely removed." "And where might that be?" Elias asked. "Here," Voss replied simply. "Our medical facilities include equipment capable of reversing the memory alterations without triggering the failsafes. We've been treating other victims of Hagora's conditioning programs for years." Aura felt as though the floor beneath her feet had turned to quicksand. Everything she thought she knew about herself Her identity, her past, her very name, was suddenly in question. She looked at Elias, seeking an anchor in the storm of revelations. His expression was one of unwavering support, despite the shock he must have been feeling. "What do you want to do?" he asked her quietly. Before she could respond, alarms blared throughout the base. Commander Desh rushed to a console, her face hardening as she read the incoming data. "Hagora fleet approaching the nebula," she reported. "Multiple cruisers, including the flagship Inevitable. They've found us." General Vex immediately took command. "Battle stations, deploy defensive squadrons, and activate the nebula distortion field." She turned to Elias and Aura. "Whatever you decide about your past, Major, we need your skills now. Both of you." Aura straightened, pushing aside her personal turmoil. There would be time for identity crises later, if they survived. "Where do you need us?" "Colonel Harrow's knowledge of Hagora fleet tactics would be invaluable in our command center," Vex replied. "And you, Major, we have a squadron of strike fighters that could use a pilot of your caliber." Elias looked to Aura, a question in his eyes. She nodded slightly. They would fight. Whatever the truth about her past, the Hagora Empire was still the enemy, still the oppressor that had caused suffering across the galaxy. "I'll coordinate with your tactical team," Elias agreed. "But I want direct communication with Aura's fighter at all times." "Done," Vex confirmed, already moving toward the command station. As personnel rushed to their battle stations, Aura and Elias shared a brief, private moment. "Be careful out there," he told her, his voice low and intense. "Whatever else is true, I need you to come back." "I will," she promised. "The oath binds both ways now, Colonel." He smiled, despite the circumstances. "I think we're beyond oaths at this point, don't you?" Before she could respond, Commander Desh called for Elias. With a final nod, they parted. Elias to the command center, Aura to the fighter bay. The approaching battle would decide not just the fate of the Resistance, but perhaps the future of the entire Viridian galaxy. And somewhere within the Hagora fleet was Admiral Korin Zast, the brother she couldn't remember, the man who had shaped her destiny from the shadows. The fighter bay was a cacophony of activity as pilots rushed to their vessels and ground crews performed final checks. Aura was directed to a sleek, black fighter with distinctive red markings along its wings. "Viper Squadron, call sign Talon 1. A stern-faced Tressian flight officer informed her, handing over a neural interface helmet. "Your team is already prepped and waiting for orders." The helmet connected directly to the fighter's systems, allowing for faster-than-thought reactions, a significant advantage in the chaos of space combat. As Aura settled into the cockpit, she felt a strange sense of familiarity, as though she had flown this exact model before. Another echo of her forgotten past, perhaps. "Talon 1 to Viper Squadron," she transmitted as her systems came online. "Form up on my wing once we clear the hangar. Priority targets will be designated by command." A chorus of acknowledgments came from her squadron, 11 pilots of various species, all united against a common enemy. The hangar doors opened, revealing the swirling gases of the Veil Nebula beyond, now disrupted by the approaching Hagora fleet. "Vipers, launch!" Aura commanded, and her fighter shot forward into space, followed closely by her squadron. Through her neural interface, Aura received tactical data from the command center, Elias's voice providing specific intelligence about the Hagora formations. "The Inevitable is hanging back, coordinating from within the protection of its escort cruisers," he informed her. "They're deploying standard pincer maneuvers, trying to flank our defensive positions." "Copy that," she responded. "Viper Squadron, we'll target their forward screening vessels, disrupt their formation, and create an opening for our heavy gunships." The battle unfolded in 3 dimensions, fighters weaving through the colorful gases of the nebula, energy weapons piercing the darkness with brilliant flashes of light. Aura flew with preternatural skill, her Valyrian reflexes enhanced by the neural interface, allowing her to execute maneuvers that would have been impossible for most pilots. Her squadron cut through the enemy's outer defensive screen, destroying 3 Hagora fighters in their initial pass. As they banked for another attack run, Aura noticed a distinct change in the enemy's tactics. "Command, the Hagora forces are shifting focus," she reported. "They're concentrating fire on our central defenses, rather than pressing the flanking maneuver." "Confirmed," Elias replied, his voice tense. "This doesn't match standard Hagora doctrine. They're exposing their command ships to counterattack." A new voice cut into their communication channel, one that Aura recognized immediately, despite never having heard it clearly before. "Because they're not trying to win this battle, Colonel Harrow," Admiral Zast stated calmly. "They're executing a targeted extraction operation." "Zast!" Aura hissed, anger flaring at the sound of his voice. "What game are you playing?" "No game, sister," he replied, and something in his tone, a warmth, a familiarity, sent a shiver through her. "I'm trying to save your life. The Hagora Council has deployed their prototype neural disruptor on the inevitable. Its primary target is you." Elias's voice cut in, urgent. "Aura, fall back to the base immediately. We need to—" His transmission was suddenly drowned out by static as a massive energy surge erupted from the inevitable. A wave of pale blue energy expanded outward, passing harmlessly through the Hagora vessels, but causing the resistance ships to shudder as their systems fluctuated. Aura felt a sharp, stabbing pain behind her eyes as the wave reached her fighter. The neural interface amplified the effect, sending cascades of agony through her mind. Fractured images flashed before her, a childhood on a Hagora military base, training exercises with her brother Corrin, the surgical procedures that enhanced her Valyrian traits, the memory wipe that gave her a new identity. "Karina," Zast's voice came through clearly now, using a name that simultaneously felt alien and achingly familiar. "Your neural conditioning is breaking down. The disruptor was calibrated to target the specific frequency of your implants. You need to disconnect from your fighter systems before the feedback kills you." Through waves of pain, Aura, or Karina, struggled to maintain control of her vessel. Her squadron was calling for orders, their voices distant through the agony in her skull. "Viper Squadron, return to base," she managed to command. "I'll cover your retreat." "Negative. Talon 1, came the response. "We're not leaving you out here." "That's an order," she snarled, banking her fighter toward the inevitable. If the neural disruptor was targeting her specifically, then she would take the fight directly to its source. In the command center, Elias watched in horror as Aura's fighter broke formation, heading straight for the heart of the Hagora fleet. He grabbed the communication console, his knuckles white. "Aura, stand down, that's suicide!" No response came, but on the tactical display, he could see her fighter weaving through enemy fire with decreasing precision. She was losing control, either of the vessel or herself. "We need to get her back," he told General Vex. "Now." The general's expression was grim. "We don't have the resources for an extraction. The entire fleet is engaged." "Then give me a ship," Elias demanded. "I'll go after her myself." Before Vex could respond, the tactical display showed a new development. A Hagora command shuttle had broken away from the inevitable, flying on an intercept course with Aura's fighter. The communication channel crackled again. "Colonel Harrow," Admiral Zast's voice came through clearly. "I'm moving to retrieve my sister. I suggest you convince your resistance friends to withdraw while they can. The neural disruptor was only the first wave. The inevitable carries enough firepower to obliterate your base once they pinpoint its exact location in the nebula." "Why should I trust you?" Elias demanded. "Because we both want the same thing," Zast replied simply. "Her survival." On the display, they watched as Zast's shuttle drew alongside Aura's fighter, A tractor beam engaged, stabilizing the smaller vessel which had begun to drift erratically. Elias made a decision. "General, order the evacuation. We need to get our people out of here." Vex hesitated only briefly before nodding. "All vessels, execute emergency withdrawal protocol. Rendezvous at fallback point Omega." As the resistance forces began their tactical retreat, Elias watched the display with a sense of helpless rage. Aura was being taken by the enemy, or by her brother, depending on which version of reality proved true. Either way, she was beyond his reach. "Zast," he transmitted on the secure channel. "If you harm her—" "I've spent 15 years searching for my sister, Colonel," the Admiral replied. "Everything I've done has been to bring her home safely. But understand this. Her conditioning is breaking down. The person you know as Aura Lennox is a construct, a false identity implanted to make her an effective deep-cover operative. When those barriers fully collapse, she may not be the woman you've come to care for." The implication was clear and devastating. If Aura's identity was truly artificial, then the woman Elias had fought beside, had come to trust and perhaps love, might cease to exist once her original memories returned. "She made an oath," Elias said finally, "and whatever else changes, I don't believe she'll break it." Zast was silent for a moment. "For both your sakes, I hope you're right. Stand down, Colonel. This isn't your fight anymore." As the communication cut off, Elias watched Zast's shuttle turn away from the battle. Aura's fighter secured in its tractor beam. The Hagora fleet continued its assault on the resistance forces, but it was clear that their primary objective had been achieved. Aura was gone. In the evacuation transport, as the resistance forces scattered to predetermined rendezvous points, Elias sat alone, replaying the events in his mind. He had failed to protect her, the woman who had sworn to protect him with her life. Mira found him there, hours later, staring at the tactical display that showed the last known coordinates of Zast's shuttle. "We'll find her," the engineer promised. "Her aquatic features set in determination. The Coalition has resources, contacts throughout the galaxy." Elias nodded absently. "Did you know about her true identity?" Mira hesitated. "We had suspicions based on intelligence reports, but nothing concrete until Dr. Voss accessed the sealed Hagora files." "And you didn't think this was information I should have had before we reached your base? Would it have changed anything?" Mira challenged. "Would you have abandoned her if you'd known she might once have been a Hagora operative?" The question struck home. "No," Elias admitted, "but she deserved to know the truth about herself, to make her own choices." "And now Zast has taken that choice from her," Mira said softly. "Whatever he intends, he's forcing her to confront a past she may not be ready for." Elias's expression hardened. "Then, we need to find her before that confrontation destroys her." He turned to Mira with renewed purpose. "You said the Coalition has resources. I need access to everything you have on Zast, his known locations, associates, patterns of movement. If he's taking Aura somewhere to help her recover her memories, it has to be a secure location away from Hagora oversight." "Why would he operate outside official channels?" Mira asked. "He's a high-ranking admiral." "Because the memory conditioning program was officially discontinued," Elias explained, his tactical mind fully engaged now. "If Zast has been working independently to find his sister all these years, he's had to develop resources beyond the Hagora command structure, contacts, safe houses, medical facilities capable of handling the delicate process of memory restoration." Understanding dawned in Mira's eyes. "And those resources would leave traces we could follow." "Exactly." Elias pulled up a star chart on the nearest console. "We start with the planets along the border between Hagora space and the neutral zones, places where a Hagora officer could operate without drawing attention, but with access to advanced medical technology." As they began their search, A new determination filled Elias. He had failed to protect Aura once. He would not fail again. Whatever remained of the woman he knew, whether she was Aura Lennox or Karina Zast beneath the conditioning, he would find her. The oath bound them both now. Consciousness returned to Aura in fragments. Sensations first, then sounds. Finally, coherent thoughts. She was lying on a medical bed. Soft restraints at her wrists and ankles. The air smelled of antiseptic and ozone, a combination she associated with advanced medical facilities. Equipment hummed softly nearby, monitoring her vital signs. When she opened her eyes, the first thing she saw was a man seated beside her bed. He was older, perhaps 50 standard years, with short-cropped silver hair and features that seemed distantly familiar. His uniform bore the insignia of a Higora admiral, but he wore it unbuttoned and casual, as though regulations no longer concerned him. "Welcome back," he said, his voice confirming what her eyes had already told her. This was Admiral Corin Zast, the man who claimed to be her brother. "Where am I?" she demanded, testing the restraints. They allowed some movement but would prevent her from leaving the bed. "A private medical facility on Lorith Station," Zast replied. "Officially, it doesn't exist. Unofficially, it's where the Higora High Command sends its most valuable assets when they need treatment that falls outside official protocols." "And what am I being treated for?" Aura asked, though she already suspected the answer. Zast's expression softened slightly. "Memory reconstruction. The neural disruptor began the process of breaking down your conditioning, but it's unstable. Without proper medical intervention, the conflicting memory patterns could cause permanent damage." Aura studied him, searching for any resemblance to herself, any flicker of recognition. There was something in the set of his jaw, perhaps, that mirrored her own, but nothing that triggered a genuine memory. "You claim to be my brother," she said finally. "I am your brother," he corrected gently. "Though I understand your skepticism, the conditioning was thorough, designed to create a completely new identity with no connection to your past." "And what was my past? If what you and the Resistance say is true, I was a Higora operative, a weapon pointed at my own kind." Zast sighed heavily. "It's more complicated than that. You volunteered for Project Chameleon because you believed in its mission, to infiltrate terrorist cells that were targeting civilian populations. You were idealistic, committed to protecting innocent lives regardless of species." "What went wrong?" Aura asked, some inner sense telling her that tragedy lurked in the answer. "The project changed," Zast replied, his voice hardening. "New leadership redirected its focus from counterterrorism to broad infiltration of non-human populations. Agents like you were sent to gather intelligence that would later be used for military strikes against civilian targets." He paused, clearly struggling with the memory. "When you discovered the truth about how your intelligence was being used, you tried to warn the communities you had infiltrated. You were captured, labeled a traitor, and scheduled for termination. But you intervened," Aura guessed. Zast nodded. "I had risen high enough in intelligence to access classified files. I arranged for your death during a mission, then had you transported to a remote Valyrian settlement where memory conditioning would give you a new identity. Aura Lennox, a full-blooded Valyrian with no connection to Higora. You placed me with the grandmother I remember," Aura said, pieces falling into place. "She was part of the deception. Elia Lennox was a former Resistance operative who owed me a life debt," Zast explained. "She agreed to pose as your grandmother, to help establish your new identity. She came to care for you deeply during the years you spent together. The revelation should have hurt. Should have felt like a betrayal. Instead, Aura found herself grateful for the kindness shown by a woman who had no obligation to her. She taught me the old ways, the traditions. Yes, she believed that grounding you in Valyrian culture would help stabilize your new identity. And it worked, until you encountered Elias Harrow on Theros. The mention of Elias brought a rush of clarity to Aura's thoughts. Where is he? What happened after the battle? The resistance forces retreated to secondary positions, Zast told her. Harrow was among the evacuees. He's safe, for now. Relief flooded through her, followed immediately by suspicion. Why would you care about his safety? He's an enemy of the empire you serve. Zast's expression turned wry. I think we've established that my loyalties are somewhat complex. Harrow's defection provided the perfect opportunity to draw you out of the shadows where I had hidden you. When you made your blood oath to protect him, it created a narrative that I could use to manipulate events. You've been using both of us, Aura accused. I've been trying to save you, Zast corrected. The memory conditioning was always meant to be temporary, a stopgap measure until I could secure a way to protect you permanently from the Higora Council. Harrow's defection and your oath created a story compelling enough to distract the Council, while I put the final pieces in place. What final pieces? Zast rose from his chair and moved to a nearby console. Evidence of the Council's crimes, genocide, illegal experimentation, corruption on a galactic scale. Enough to spark revolution not just among the subjugated species, but within the human populations of the core worlds themselves. He turned back to face her. But I needed you, Karina. Your testimony about Project Chameleon, combined with the evidence I've gathered, could bring down the entire Higora power structure. The name, Karina, sent a jolt through Aura's mind. Images flashed before her eyes. Training exercises in a sterile facility, covert missions on distant worlds, secret meetings with her brother, where he passed her information that saved innocent lives. It's starting to come back, Zast observed, noticing her reaction. The neural disruptor weakened the barriers between your constructed identity and your true memories. The medical team here can complete the process safely, integrating both sets of experiences without the trauma of sudden revelation. Aura, or was it Karina now, felt torn between two realities. The fierce loyalty and independence of Aura Lennox, mercenary and oath-sworn protector. The idealism and complexity of Karina Zast, undercover operative, turned conscience-stricken whistleblower. And if I refuse the treatment, she asked, if I choose to remain Aura Lennox? Zast's expression turned grave. That's no longer an option. The neural disruptor has destabilized the conditioning. Without intervention, the conflicting memory patterns will cause progressive neural degradation. Seizures at first, then cognitive decline, eventually death. I'm sorry, but there's no going back to simple ignorance. The clinical detachment in his voice reminded her of their shared blood, a tendency toward logical analysis, even in emotional situations. It was the first thing about him that truly felt familiar. How long do I have to decide? She asked. The medical team is preparing the procedure now, Zast replied. We have perhaps 6 hours before the degradation becomes irreversible. 6 hours to decide who she would be, the warrior who had sworn to protect Elias Harrow, or the sister of Admiral Zast with a mission to bring down the Higora Council from within. 6 hours to determine whether Aura Lennox would continue to exist in some form, or be subsumed entirely by Karina Zast. I want to speak to Elias, she said finally. Before I make my decision. Zast hesitated. That's not possible. The resistance forces are scattered, and establishing communication would risk exposing this location. You're Director of Special Operations, Aura countered. You have resources. Find him, because I won't agree to this procedure otherwise. Degradation be damned. Brother and sister stared at each other. A silent battle of wills that felt eerily familiar. Another echo of a shared past she couldn't quite remember. Finally, Zast nodded. I'll see what I can do, but I make no promises. As he left the medical chamber, Aura closed her eyes, focusing on the one constant in her turbulent existence, her oath to protect Elias Harrow. whatever else changed. Whatever memories returned or identities merged, that commitment would remain her anchor in the storm. The question was whether Elias would still want her protection once he learned the full truth of who and what she had been. The resistance remnant had regrouped at an abandoned mining facility in the Taurus sector, a region notorious for gravitational anomalies that made it difficult to navigate without precise coordinates. It was a temporary solution at best. The facility lacked resources for long-term habitation, but it provided security while they assessed their losses and planned their next move. Elias had taken over a small storage room, converting it into an impromptu command center with the help of Mira and a handful of technicians. The walls were covered with star charts and intelligence reports, focusing on possible locations where Zast might have taken Aura. Lorith Station is our most likely target, Elias told the assembled team, highlighting a remote space station at the edge of Hagora territory. It's officially listed as a deep space monitoring post, but our intelligence suggests it houses classified medical facilities. The station has significant defenses, cautioned Commander Desh, who had survived the evacuation. And it's directly in the path of a Hagora patrol route. We'd need a substantial force to breach it. We don't have a substantial force, Mira pointed out. The fleet is scattered across 3 sectors, and we lost nearly 30% of our fighters in the Nebula battle. Elias ran a hand through his hair in frustration. Then we need a different approach. Infiltration rather than direct assault. With what assets? Desh challenged. Our deep cover operatives were exposed when the base fell. We have no one placed near Loreth who could help us. Before Elias could respond, a junior communications officer burst into the room. Colonel Harrow, sir, we're receiving a transmission on a secure resistance frequency. It's requesting you specifically. Elias exchanged glances with Desh. Could be a trap. The Hagora forces might have extracted our communication protocols from the base before it was evacuated. Only one way to find out, Desh replied grimly. But we'll take precautions. They moved to the communications center, where technicians were already working to trace the incoming transmission while simultaneously preparing countermeasures against any embedded tracking signals. The signal's origin is masked, reported the lead technician. Multiple relays, sophisticated encryption. Whoever's sending this has serious resources. Put it through, Elias ordered. Audio only, no visual feed that could contain hidden data packets. The speakers crackled with static, then cleared to reveal a familiar voice, but not the one Elias had hoped for. Colonel Harrow, Admiral Zast greeted him. I trust the Resistance's evacuation protocols were adequate. Elias's jaw tightened. Where is she, Zast? Safe, for the moment, the Admiral replied. Though her condition is deteriorating faster than anticipated. The neural disruptor's effects were more severe than our initial scans indicated. What does that mean? Elias demanded, a cold fear gripping him. It means that without immediate medical intervention, the conflicting memory patterns in her mind will cause permanent damage, Zast explained, his tone clinical. We have the technology to safely integrate her original memories with her Aura Lennox identity, but she's refusing treatment. Why? She wants to speak with you first, Zast said simply. And given the circumstances, I'm inclined to grant her request. Elias was immediately suspicious. Out of the goodness of your heart? Out of concern for my sister, Zast corrected him. And because I believe you care for her enough to want what's best for her survival, regardless of your feelings about me or the Empire. The room had gone silent, all eyes on Elias as he weighed the obvious trap against the chance to reach Aura. What are you proposing? He asked finally. A neutral meeting location, Zast replied. I'll bring Karina, Aura, and you'll come alone. After you've spoken, she can make her decision about the treatment, and you'll both be free to leave. Just like that, Elias's disbelief was evident. You'll risk your career, your life, By letting a high-value Hagora defector and your own sister just walk away? My career is already forfeit, Zast said with surprising candor. The council knows I've been operating independently. They just haven't moved against me yet because I'm still useful. As for Karina, her happiness has always been my priority. If that happiness lies with you and your resistance, so be it. Elias muted the transmission temporarily, turning to Commander Desh. What do you think? Desh's expression was troubled. It's almost certainly a trap, but... She hesitated. The details about her condition ring true. Neural degradation following disruption of memory conditioning is well documented. If Aura is experiencing that, she needs treatment soon. And Zast is one of the few people with access to the technology required, Mira added. The procedure is complex. It requires specialized equipment we don't have. Elias unmuted the transmission. I'll need proof that she's alive and conscious before I agree to anything. Of course, Zast replied. There was a pause. Then Aura's voice came through the speakers. Elias? It's me. Her voice was strained, but unmistakable. Don't trust him completely. But I need to see you. There are things I have to tell you before I make this choice. Aura! Elias breathed, relief flooding through him. Are you all right? Physically, yes. Mentally, everything's confused. Memories that aren't mine, or maybe they are, keep surfacing. I need an anchor. Elias. Something real to hold on to while everything else shifts. The vulnerability in her voice convinced Elias more than any proof of life could have. This was Aura, his Aura, regardless of what name she had been born with. I'll come, he promised. Just tell me where. Zast's voice returned. The coordinates are being transmitted now. It's an automated research outpost in the Kelvin Expanse. Abandoned after the ionic storms made the region too hazardous for regular access. The facility is intact but unmanned. Neutral ground. The coordinates appeared on their screen, and the technicians immediately began analyzing them. The location checks out, one reported after a moment. It is a Hagora research outpost, decommissioned 3 years ago due to environmental hazards. No signs of recent activation or suspicious communication traffic. I'll be there, Elias told Zast. But I'm bringing a shuttle with defensive capabilities. Try anything, and I'll make sure none of us leaves that outpost alive. Understood, Colonel, Zast replied, sounding almost approving of the precaution. We'll arrive in 6 hours. Come alone, or not at all. The transmission ended abruptly. This is insane, Desh stated flatly once the line was closed. You can't seriously be considering this. I'm not considering it, Elias replied, already moving toward the hangar bay. I'm doing it. Have the fastest shuttle prepped and loaded with defensive countermeasures. At least take a team with you, Desh argued, following him. A security detail could... No, Elias cut her off. Zast was clear about the conditions. If I show up with backup, he'll disappear with Aura, and we may never find them again. This is our one chance. Mira stepped forward. Let me come with you, at least as far as the approach. I can modify the shuttle systems to give you an edge if things go wrong. Elias considered this, then nodded. All right, but you stay with the shuttle when we reach the outpost. If I'm not back in 3 hours, or if you detect any Hagora ships approaching, you leave immediately. That's an order. As preparations began for the mission, Elias found himself in the strange position of placing his trust in a Hagora admiral, the very enemy he had spent months fleeing. But for Aura, he would take the risk. She had sacrificed everything to protect him. He could do no less for her. Whatever Zast's true agenda, whatever Aura's original identity might have been. One thing remained certain. The oath that bound them transcended names and pasts. It was a promise between two people who had found something worth fighting for in a galaxy torn apart by prejudice and power. and Elias Harrow intended to honor that promise, no matter the cost. The Kelvin expanse lived up to its reputation for atmospheric volatility. As Elias piloted the shuttle through swirling clouds, illuminated by random bursts of ionic energy, he understood why the research outpost had been abandoned. Navigation instruments fluctuated wildly, and the shuttle's hull creaked under the strain of opposing pressure systems. "The atmospheric disturbances will provide some cover," Mira noted from the co-pilot's seat. "But they'll also make a quick escape difficult if things go south." "If things go south, a quick escape will be the least of my concerns," Elias replied grimly. The outpost came into view through a momentary break in the storm clouds, a utilitarian structure perched on a rocky plateau, its metal surfaces dulled by years of exposure to the harsh environment. A sleek shuttle was already docked at the facility's landing pad, bearing no official Hagora markings but clearly of military design. "They're here," Elias observed. "Any signs of additional vessels or personnel?" Mira checked the sensors, frowning at the inconsistent readings. "Hard to tell with all this interference, but nothing obvious on scanners." Elias brought their shuttle down beside Zast's vessel, the landing struts adjusting automatically to the uneven surface. As the engines powered down, he performed a final check of his equipment: sidearm, emergency beacon, the small but potent explosive device concealed in his boot heel. He had no illusions about walking into a potential trap unarmed. 3 hours, he reminded Mira. "If I'm not back by then, you leave. No heroics." The engineer nodded reluctantly. "Be careful in there, and bring her back if you can." "That's the plan," Elias assured her, though both knew how rarely plans survived contact with reality in their line of work. The outpost's airlock cycled open as he approached, suggesting someone inside was monitoring his arrival. The interior was dimly lit by emergency power, casting long shadows across abandoned research equipment and empty workstations. The air was stale but breathable, the life support systems functioning at minimal levels. Elias moved cautiously through the deserted corridors, following directional indicators toward the central laboratory. His military training kept him alert for any sign of ambush, but the facility seemed genuinely abandoned, save for his quarry. The laboratory doors slid open at his approach, revealing a large chamber dominated by a circular platform in its center. Standing beside it was Admiral Corin Zast, his Hagora uniform incongruous in the derelict setting. And, on the platform, connected to various monitoring devices but no longer restrained, was Aura. She looked pale, her platinum hair dull under the emergency lighting, but her violet eyes brightened when she saw him. "Elias," she said, her voice stronger than it had been during their brief communication. "You came?" "I said I would," he replied simply, keeping a wary eye on Zast as he approached the platform. The Admiral stepped back, giving them space. "You have 1 hour," he told them. "After that, we need to make a decision about the procedure. The medical team is standing by at Loreth Station." Elias nodded acknowledgement but kept his attention fixed on Aura. Up close, he could see the strain in her features, the slight tremor in her hands, the unfocused quality that occasionally passed across her gaze. "How bad is it?" he asked quietly, when Zast had retreated to a monitoring station across the room. "Bad enough," she admitted. "The memories are bleeding through. Not just images or sensations now, but complete experiences. One moment I'm Aura Lennox, the next I'm Karina Zast, and I can't tell which is more real." Elias took her hand, noting how cold her fingers felt. "And what does Zast's procedure involve?" "Neural recalibration," she explained. "A controlled integration of both memory sets using targeted stimulation of specific brain regions. In theory, it would allow me to retain everything, Aura's experiences and skills alongside Karina's original memories." "In theory," Elias repeated skeptically. "And the risks?" "Significant," she acknowledged. "Complete memory loss, personality fragmentation, or a hybrid identity that's neither fully Aura nor fully Karina. She squeezed his hand. That's why I needed to see you before I decided. You're the only constant between both lives. The oath binds us, regardless of who I was before. Elias studied her face, searching for the woman he had come to know, the fierce warrior who had saved his life on Theros, the loyal companion who had stood by him through months of pursuit. Whatever you decide, he told her. I'll support you. But I need to know something first. He leaned closer, lowering his voice so Zast couldn't overhear. Do you trust him? Is he really your brother? Aura's expression turned troubled. The genetic markers match, and there are flashes. Memories of growing up together, training exercises where he taught me to shoot, secret communications during my undercover missions, where he warned me about Hagora strikes so I could evacuate civilians. She shook her head slightly. I think he is my brother, and I think he believes he's helping me. But his methods are typically Hagora, Elias finished for her. The end justifies any means. Yes, she agreed. And that's what worries me. If I undergo this procedure, if I fully recover Karina's memories and personality, what happens to Aura? To the oath I swore to you? Her voice dropped even lower. To us? The question hung between them, laden with unspoken emotions that had developed during their months on the run. Neither had put words to the connection that had grown beyond protector and protected. But both felt its strength. The oath isn't just words, Elias told her. It's a choice you make every day. Whatever memories return, whatever name you call yourself, that choice remains yours. He touched her face gently. And I'll be there, regardless of what you decide. Across the room, Zast cleared his throat. I don't mean to interrupt, but there's something you should both see. He activated a holographic display, showing a Hagora fleet formation moving through a nearby sector. The Council has deployed the Third Fleet. They're searching for us, specifically for Karina. How did they find us? Elias demanded, immediately suspicious. They didn't, Zast replied. Not yet. But they've narrowed the search area to this sector. It's only a matter of time before they detect our vessels, even with the atmospheric interference. Aura struggled to sit up straighter, fighting against the increasing neural instability. Why are they so determined to find me? I'm just one operative from a discontinued program. Because you're the key to bringing down the entire council, Zast told her. Your testimony, combined with the evidence I've gathered, could spark a revolution within the Empire itself. The moderate factions have long opposed the Council's xenophobic policies, but they've lacked the proof needed to act. We can provide that proof. So that's your game, Elias realized. You're not just trying to save your sister. You're planning a coup. Zast didn't deny it. The current council is leading the Empire to destruction. Their policies of oppression and genocide will eventually unite the entire galaxy against us. I'm trying to save human civilization from its own worst impulses. Noble, Elias remarked. If I believed that was your only motivation. Believe what you will, Colonel, Zast replied. But the fact remains that we're running out of time. The Third Fleet will reach this outpost within 12 hours. By then, we need to be far away, either at Loreth Station for the procedure, or at a resistance facility of your choosing. The implication was clear. Zast was offering them a choice. Accept his help in restoring Aura's memories, or reject it and return to the resistance. Either way, he wouldn't force the issue. It's your decision, Elias told Aura. Whatever you choose, I'll stand by you. Aura closed her eyes briefly, centering herself against the chaotic rush of competing memories. When she opened them again, there was a clarity that had been missing before. I need to know the truth, she said finally, about who I was, what I did, and how I became Aura Lennox. Without that knowledge, I'm fighting shadows, enemies I can't see, motives I can't understand. She looked at Zast. I'll undergo the procedure, but on one condition. Elias comes with us to Loreth Station. Zast frowned. That's not possible. Loreth is a secure Hagora facility. Bringing a known defector there is non-negotiable. Aura interrupted. You said yourself your career is already forfeit. The Council knows you've gone rogue. What difference does one more act of treason make? Brother and sister stared at each other. Another silent battle of wills. Finally, Zast sighed. Very well, but he'll need to remain in a secure area of the medical bay. I can't risk the medical staff reporting his presence. Agreed, Aura said, then turned to Elias. Are you willing to take that risk? To enter a Hagora facility when every soldier in the Empire has orders to kill you on sight? Elias smiled grimly. After everything we've been through, a medical bay sounds positively relaxing. Before anyone could respond, the facility's perimeter alarms blared to life. Zast rushed to the monitoring station, his expression darkening as he read the incoming data. Multiple vessels approaching, he reported. Hagora signatures, but not Third Fleet. These are mercenary vessels operating under Hagora contracts. He looked up, his face grim. Commander Flor Sant has found us. The name sent a visible shudder through Aura. Sant, she whispered. She's been hunting me since Nishka. Who is she? Elias asked, already moving to help Aura disconnect from the monitoring equipment. My former commanding officer in Special Operations, Aura explained, wincing as neural interfaces detached from her temples. I blinded her in one eye during a mission gone wrong. She's had a vendetta ever since. She's also completely loyal to the Council, Zast added. If she captures us, there will be no trial, no chance for escape, just immediate execution. How did she find us? Elias demanded. Zast's expression was troubled. I don't know. The only people who knew about this meeting were you, me, and whoever you told in the Resistance. The implication hung in the air. Either the Resistance had a traitor, or Zast himself had set a trap. Before they could debate the point, the entire facility shuddered as something struck the outer hull. They're making a direct assault, Zast observed, checking the security feeds. 3 ships, at least 24 troops. They'll breach the main airlock within minutes. We need to get to the shuttles, Elias said, supporting Aura as she struggled to stand. The neural degradation was affecting her motor control now, making her movements uncoordinated. Too late, Zast replied, pointing to a security feed that showed armed troops surrounding both vessels. They've cut off our escape. Elias assessed their situation with the cool detachment of a veteran officer. Defensive positions. Then, this facility must have security protocols, sealed bulkheads we can use to slow their advance. It does, Zast confirmed, already typing commands into the central console. I'm activating emergency containment procedures. It won't stop them, but it will buy us time. Throughout the facility, bulkheads slammed shut, compartmentalizing the structure and forcing the invaders to breach each section individually. Meanwhile, Elias helped Aura to a more defensible position, behind a heavy research console, providing her with a clear line of fire toward the laboratory entrance. Can you shoot? He asked her, concerned by the tremor in her hands. I'll manage, she replied, checking the charge on her plasma pistol. The degradation comes and goes. I'll have moments of clarity. Zast joined them, carrying what appeared to be a standard Hagora field kit. Inside, however, was an arsenal of non-standard weapons, sonic disruptors, neural stunners, and a particularly lethal-looking device that hummed with barely contained energy. Prototype weapons from Research Division, he explained, distributing the arms between them. Not officially sanctioned, which means they won't be expecting them. Elias accepted a neural stunner, examining its unfamiliar configuration. Nice to have friends in high places. Family in high places, Zast corrected, with the ghost of a smile directed at Aura. The moment of camaraderie was interrupted by a distant explosion, the sound of the intruders breaching the first set of bulkheads. Sant's forces were making quick work of the facility's defenses. 6 minutes, maybe less, before they reach us. Zast estimated. Elias keyed his emergency communicator, hoping the signal would penetrate the atmospheric interference. Mira, do you copy? We have hostiles surrounding both shuttles. Multiple Hagora mercenary vessels in orbit. Static hissed. Then, Mira's voice came through. Broken, but intelligible. Read you. Already detected them. Activated shuttle stealth systems, but they know. Here. Can you get airborne? Elias asked. More static. Then. Negative. Too many. Ground. But I can. Distraction. Before Elias could respond, a series of explosions rocked the plateau outside the facility, on the security feeds. They watched as several of the mercenaries surrounding their shuttles were thrown back by the blasts. What did she do? Zast asked, impressed despite himself. Mira's creativity with explosives is legendary, Elias replied. She must have rigged some of the shuttle's power cells to detonate remotely. The distraction had the desired effect. Many of the mercenaries moved to investigate the explosions, thinning the forces around the shuttles. But the main assault team continued their methodical advance through the facility, breaching bulkhead after bulkhead. We're still trapped, Aura observed, her voice clearer now as she fought through another wave of neural disruption. Even with fewer guards outside, we'd never reach the shuttles before Sant's main force reaches us. There might be another way, Zast said suddenly, studying a schematic of the facility on his datapad. This outpost was studying atmospheric anomalies. They had deployment tubes for research probes, essentially miniature escape pods designed to withstand the ionic storms. Where? Elias demanded. 2 levels down, in the environmental analysis lab, Zast replied. But we'd have to get past the advancing forces to reach it. Another explosion, closer this time, indicated that Sant's team had breached another section. No choice, Aura decided, forcing herself to her feet through sheer willpower. We move now, or we die here. They gathered what weapons they could carry and moved to a maintenance access point in the laboratory floor. Zast entered a security override, and the panel slid open to reveal a narrow service tunnel. This will bypass the main corridors, he explained as they descended. It won't show on standard facility schematics, so Sant's forces might not know about it. The tunnel was cramped and poorly lit, forcing them to move in single file with Zast leading the way. Aura followed, her movements becoming more uncoordinated as another wave of neural disruption hit her. Elias brought up the rear, constantly checking behind them for signs of pursuit. They had descended 1 level when Aura suddenly collapsed. Her body convulsing as competing neural patterns overwhelmed her system. Elias caught her before she could strike her head on the metal flooring. She's getting worse, he told Zast, who had turned back at the sound of her fall. The neural degradation is accelerating. Zast knelt beside his sister, checking her vital signs with practiced efficiency. The stress of the situation is exacerbating the condition, he concluded grimly. She needs the procedure soon, or the damage will be permanent. As if to confirm his diagnosis, Aura's eyes fluttered open. But the person looking out from them was different somehow. The expression, the minute changes in facial muscles, all subtly altered. Corin, she whispered, her voice higher than Aura's usual contralto. What's happening? Where are we? Zast's expression softened. We're in danger, Karina. I need you to stay with me a little longer. Can you do that? She nodded, confused but trusting. Then, as quickly as it had happened, the moment passed. Aura's familiar presence returned to her eyes, though clouded with pain and disorientation. It's getting harder to hold on, she told them. Karina is... She's not fighting me, exactly. It's more like two streams converging, neither one able to maintain its course. "We need to keep moving," Elias urged, helping her to her feet. "The probe launchers are our only chance." They continued their descent, Aura leaning heavily on Elias for support. Above them, the sounds of the mercenaries searching the facility grew louder, suggesting Sant's forces had discovered the laboratory and were now hunting for their escaped quarry. The environmental analysis lab was a large, circular chamber filled with specialized equipment for studying atmospheric conditions. In the center were three tube-like structures, the probe launchers Zast had mentioned. They're designed to protect delicate instrumentation during deployment into the ionic storms, Zast explained as they approached the launchers. Each one can hold a single person, but it will be cramped. "Will they take us far enough to escape Sant's ships?" Elias asked, eyeing the small pods dubiously. "No," Zast admitted. "But they'll carry us through the worst of the atmospheric disturbance to a point where we might be able to signal for extraction." He turned to Aura, who was barely conscious now, the neural degradation advancing rapidly. "She goes first. Help me get her into the pod." They carefully placed Aura into the closest launcher, securing her as best they could within the confined space. She stirred briefly as they prepared to seal the pod. "Elias," she murmured, reaching for his hand. "The oath still holds. Whatever happens." "I know," he assured her, squeezing her hand. "I'll find you, no matter what." Before they could close the pod, the lab doors blew inward with a deafening explosion. Through the smoke strode a figure that could only be Commander Flor Sant, tall and imposing in black battle armor, a cybernetic implant replacing the eye Aura had taken from her. Behind her came a squad of heavily armed mercenaries, weapons trained on the three fugitives. "Admiral Zast," Sant's voice was cold and precise. "The Council sends its regards." Zast straightened, placing himself between Sant and the pod containing his sister. "Commander, I see you've found employment after your discharge from official service." Sant's artificial eye glowed as it focused on Aura in the pod. "The Council values loyalty above all, Admiral. Something you seem to have forgotten." Her gaze shifted to Elias. "And Colonel Harrow, the traitor who started this entire fiasco. How convenient to find you all together." "The Council's days are numbered, Sant," Zast replied calmly. "The evidence of their crimes is already circulating among the moderate factions. Killing us won't stop what's coming." Sant smiled thinly. "Perhaps not, but it will be a satisfying start." She gestured to her mercenaries. "Secure the hybrid. Kill the others." Everything happened at once. Zast drew a concealed weapon, firing with remarkable speed for a staff officer. Two mercenaries fell before the others could react. Elias dove for cover behind a research console, returning fire with his neural stunner. In the chaos, Sant moved directly for the pod containing Aura. Despite her deteriorating condition, Aura managed to raise her plasma pistol, firing a shot that struck Sant's cybernetic eye, causing it to explode in a shower of sparks. The commander reeled back, momentarily blinded, but continued her advance through sheer determination. Zast saw the danger and made a decision. With a swift movement, he activated the pod's launch sequence, then turned to engage the advancing mercenaries, providing cover for Elias, who was pinned down by concentrated fire. The pod containing Aura sealed automatically as the launch sequence initiated. Through the small viewport, she watched in horror as Zast took a direct hit to the chest, the energy weapon burning through his uniform to the flesh beneath. He staggered, but remained standing, continuing to fire even as more shots struck him. Elias seized the moment of distraction to sprint from his cover, diving toward the second launch pod. Sant, recovering from the destruction of her cybernetic eye, saw his movement and fired, the shot grazing his shoulder and spinning him to the ground. Aura pounded weakly against the sealed pod, trying desperately to help, but the launch sequence had progressed too far. With a pneumatic hiss, Her pod shot upward into the facility's ventilation system, beginning its journey through the turbulent atmosphere of the Kelvin expanse. The last thing she saw before the launch tube curved away from the lab was Zast falling to his knees, still firing, while Elias rolled toward a fallen mercenary's weapon. Then, darkness engulfed her as the pod entered the storm-tossed skies above the facility. Inside the cramped confines of the probe, Aura struggled to remain conscious as the neural degradation advanced. The pod tumbled through violent atmospheric currents, its stabilizers fighting to maintain a controlled descent. Warning lights flashed across the simple control panel, indicating damage to the exterior shell from the ionic discharges that lit up the sky around her. Through waves of pain and disorientation, Aura focused on one thought: Elias. Had he escaped? Was he even alive? And what of Zast, the brother she had only just begun to remember? The oath still bound her to Elias, a commitment that transcended memory and identity. Whatever happened to her, whatever she became when the neural patterns finally settled, that obligation remained. As the probe continued its chaotic journey through the storm, Aura Lennox, or perhaps Karina Zast, surrendered to unconsciousness, the competing memories merging into dreams of a past half-remembered and a future uncertain. The last thought that crossed her mind before darkness claimed her was a simple, defiant promise. This is not how our story ends. 3 months later, a small, nondescript transport vessel approached the medical facility on Loreth Station. Unlike the dramatic events that had preceded their last visit to this region, the approach was methodical and authorized, the vessel bearing appropriate identification codes that allowed it to dock without challenge. 2 figures disembarked, a man with a healing scar across his left shoulder, and a woman whose platinum hair had been cut short in a military style. They were met by a medical team who escorted them directly to a secure wing of the facility. "The patient is stable but unresponsive," the chief medical officer informed them as they walked. "The neural damage was extensive, but we managed to prevent further degradation. Whether consciousness will return, that remains uncertain." They entered a private medical suite where a single patient lay connected to advanced life support systems. Admiral Corin Zast, once the feared director of special operations for the Hegora Empire, now reduced to a shell sustained by technology. Burn wounds covered much of his visible skin, and a neural interface crown encircled his head, monitoring brain activity. "He saved my life," Elias Harrow said quietly, studying the fallen admiral. "Drew their fire so I could reach the second pod." "He saved both our lives." Aura, or rather, the woman who now carried the memories of both Aura Lennox and Karina Zast, replied. "Multiple times, in ways we're only beginning to understand." The neural integration procedure had been successful, though not without cost. The woman who stood beside Elias was neither purely Aura nor purely Karina, but a synthesis of both. The fierce independence and warrior skills of one merged with the strategic intellect and complex loyalties of the other. She had chosen to keep the name Aura, finding it more fitting for the person she had become, but she acknowledged her connection to the man who lay before them. "Will he recover?" she asked the medical officer. "The physical damage will heal in time," the doctor replied. "But the neural trauma from multiple energy weapon impacts, it's beyond our current treatment capabilities. He may remain in this state indefinitely." Elias placed a supportive hand on Aura's shoulder. "He knew the risks, and he chose to face them for you, for us." She nodded, emotion tightening her throat. "Family," she said simply. The Hegora Empire was in transition. Following the battle at the Kelvin Expanse, Zast's evidence against the Council had indeed found its way to the moderate factions, triggering the coup he had envisioned. The most extremist council members had been removed from power, and negotiations had begun with the Resistance, now calling itself the Alliance for Galactic Unity. Elias, as a former Hegora officer with connections to both sides, had become a key figure in those negotiations. Aura, with her unique perspective as both Valyrian warrior and former Hagora operative, served as his advisor and protector, the oath between them evolving into a partnership of equals. "The doctors say talking to him might help," Elias suggested, moving toward the door to give her privacy. "I'll wait outside." When they were alone, Aura took her brother's hand. The man who had orchestrated so much from the shadows, who had manipulated events across the galaxy to save her, now lay helpless before her. "You were right about many things," she told him softly. "About the Council, about the future of the Empire, about the need for change." She paused, gathering her thoughts. "But you were wrong to think I needed to choose between Aura and Karina. I am both, and neither. Something new forged from the pieces of who I was." She squeezed his hand gently. "The oath I swore to Elias still stands. But I've made another oath as well. To continue your work. To build a galaxy where no one needs to hide who they are, or what they believe." A small smile crossed her face. "You'd probably say I'm being idealistic. Perhaps I am. But ideals are what we need now, after so much darkness." Outside in the corridor, Elias waited patiently. The past months had brought changes he could never have imagined when he first defied General Dren's orders on Theros. The galaxy was reshaping itself, old enemies becoming cautious allies, ancient prejudices being questioned, if not yet overcome. And through it all, Aura had remained by his side, different in some ways from the mercenary who had saved his life, yet fundamentally the same in her core principles. Their relationship had deepened into something neither could fully define, but both treasured. A bond forged in blood and sacrifice, tempered by shared purpose. When Aura emerged from Zast's room, her expression was composed once more, the momentary vulnerability hidden behind the mask of strength she habitually wore. "Ready?" Elias asked simply. She nodded. "The Alliance representatives will be expecting our report on the border negotiations." And Mira sent word that the hybrid rights delegation has arrived from the Outer Rim. As they walked together toward their vessel, Elias reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. From fugitives to diplomats, from enemies of the Empire to architects of its reformation. The path had been costly, marked by losses that still ached when remembered. Yet amid the turmoil and transformation, one constant remained, the oath that had bound them together on that fateful day on Theros. An oath that had evolved from a Valyrian warrior's blood promise into something far more profound, a commitment to stand together against whatever challenges the future might hold. "You're thinking too much again, Colonel," Aura remarked as they boarded their transport. Elias smiled. "Just appreciating how far we've come." "We've barely begun," she replied, her violet eyes reflecting the light of distant stars as the viewport opened before them. The oath was never just about protection. It was about possibility, about what we could create together. As their vessel departed Loreth Station, setting course for the newly established neutral zone where the peace talks were being held, Elias and Aura stood side by side at the viewport. Before them stretched the vast expanse of the Viridian Galaxy, no longer divided by the iron rule of the Hagora Empire, but taking its first tentative steps toward a different future. A future they would help shape, bound by an oath that had started with blood, but had grown into something far greater. A shared vision of a galaxy where differences were not just tolerated, but celebrated. Where the barriers between species and factions could be bridged by understanding and respect. It would not be an easy path. Old hatreds and prejudices would not disappear overnight. The remnants of the extremist factions would continue to resist change. But for the first time in generations, there was hope, a flickering flame that, if carefully tended, might grow into a light that could illuminate even the darkest corners of the galaxy. And through whatever challenges lay ahead, the oath would hold, not just between Aura and Elias, but extending outward to encompass all they fought to protect. A promise written not in blood, but in the shared conviction that a better future was possible. The blood oath of Viridian had become something more, a covenant of hope in a universe too long shrouded in fear. As their ship accelerated toward the stars, Aura glanced at Elias, a rare smile softening her features. "By blood and stars," she murmured, echoing the ancient Valyrian oath. "By blood and stars," he replied. The words no longer just a ritual, but a commitment to the journey they had begun together. A journey that would continue as long as there were wrongs to right and hope to nurture in the vast, troubled, but infinitely precious galaxy they called home.